Have you ever wondered why some people can just walk into a room and effortlessly command respect and affection? It's like they have this undeniable magnetic pull, right? Meanwhile, others kind of struggle to make even a basic surface-level connection. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking what we call the architecture of instant affinity. We're going to discover the hidden mechanics running behind the scenes of our everyday human interactions. So, let's dive right into the biggest question right off the bat. Are people just born with this, or is it something you can learn? Look, it is incredibly easy to assume that highly charismatic individuals just hit the genetic jackpot, like they have some natural talent or uniquely high intelligence. But psychology actually reveals something totally different. Human connection is driven by hidden internal mechanisms. Likability? It's not a roll of the genetic dice. Not at all. It's actually the result of specific mental habits and deeper patterns that most of us just completely overlook. And the best part? If you understand how the human brain processes trust, safety, and interest, you can absolutely learn to build meaningful connections and build them a lot faster.
To really get a grip on this, our roadmap today covers 4 key areas. First, the power of presence. Then, the psychology of safety. Third, emotional intelligence. And finally, the ultimate trust builder. Let's get into it.
Starting off with Phase 1, the power of presence. Think about that intense, almost physical pressure you feel to just fill the silence to avoid an awkward pause. We've all been there, right? You start panicking and suddenly you're rambling about the weather or what you had for breakfast just to keep the air moving. But highly likable people, they practice the exact opposite. They use active observation. They've learned to speak a little less and process a lot more. By actively listening, you're actually gathering incredibly valuable data instead of just nervously spilling it all out.
There's a great saying for this. Silence often hides a very active and observant mind. When you finally stop trying to plug every single gap in a conversation, you suddenly free up all this mental bandwidth. You start noticing behavioral patterns and subtle reactions that everyone else in the room is completely missing. And you know what? People are naturally drawn to those who choose their words carefully. It makes your presence feel grounded, solid, and intentional, rather than anxious or reactive. Now, being truly observant also requires total immersion. Ever notice someone documenting literally every single second of an event on their phone? Psychologically speaking, holding up that screen creates an immediate, almost physical emotional distance from the actual moment. It instantly feels artificial to the people around you. To be genuinely present-minded, you have to stay fully inside the current experience. You need to keep your attention absolutely locked on the people you are actually with.
The core mindset we're talking about here is participation over documentation. The human brain is incredibly smart. It immediately registers this behavior as deeply authentic. Think about it. When you aren't distracted by trying to capture the perfect moment for some audience that isn't even in the room, the connection you make with the people who actually are in the room goes significantly deeper.
Moving right along to Phase 2, the psychology of safety. This brings us to a fascinating concept called the mere exposure effect. Basically, our brains are hardwired to naturally prefer what feels familiar to us. Why? Because predictability creates psychological safety. It's just how we're built. The more someone experiences you as a consistent, reliable presence, the more their brain subconsciously interprets you as a profound source of security. By simply showing up steadily over time, you become a safe, predictable part of their environment. It's a real game changer.
But actually, there's a really surprising twist to this whole psychological safety thing, and it's called selective vulnerability. Look, it is incredibly tempting to act perfect all the time, right? We think that absolute flawlessness is what's going to impress people. But in reality, total perfection just creates emotional distance. It makes you look completely self-sufficient, sure, but also deeply unapproachable. Selective vulnerability is the simple practice of casually revealing a small mistake or a minor insecurity. Doing this actively removes your social mask.
When you constantly hide your insecurities, you're essentially holding up a massive wall, and the other person's brain immediately registers that barrier. You're shutting them out. But when you casually admit to a small fear, or say a minor slip-up at work, you're sending a massive subconscious signal. You are a safe person. It tells them, hey, you aren't perfect, they aren't perfect. And instantly, the psychological safety in that room just skyrockets.
All right, let's transition to Phase 3, emotional intelligence.
Most people treat conversations like a game of mechanical ping pong. You know the drill. They hear a specific word and they instinctively fire a response right back over the net. Boom, boom. But highly charismatic people, they practice context building. Instead of just reacting to the raw data of the words being spoken, they try to piece together the entire puzzle before making a move. Adding this interpretive, deeply empathetic layer to how you listen actually makes your behavior feel profoundly human. So, what exactly are these context-building signals? Well, it's not just about the words being said. It's the tone of voice. It's those incredibly subtle facial expressions flashing across someone's face for just a split second. It's even the timing of the interaction itself. Connecting these small, totally separate signals gives you this sort of conversational superpower. You can actually begin to predict what someone needs in an interaction before it even becomes obvious or spoken out loud.
Pulling this off requires being what we call a deep feeler. Deep feelers notice the emotional details that everyone else just entirely glosses over. They are paying incredibly close attention to things like a slight, almost imperceptible shift in someone's energy, or a sudden, subtle change in their attitude. They are reading between the lines.
And when you notice those details, you've got to use them. Imagine just casually mentioning a tiny detail someone shared with you a whole week ago, or gently noting that their energy seems just a little bit different today. Doing that proves your emotional investment, and man, it makes the connection feel emotionally significant incredibly fast. You get to completely bypass all that standard, boring small talk and instantly create a bond grounded in genuine understanding.
And that brings us to our final phase. Phase 4, the ultimate trust builder.
We've arrived at the absolute pinnacle of mental maturity, and it's this: taking absolute ownership. Let's be honest with ourselves for a second here. When things go sideways, our first, very human instinct is usually to look around the room for a convenient scapegoat, right? We just want someone else to blame. It's just easier. But avoiding responsibility is literally one of the most glaring, undeniable signs of emotional immaturity.
You see, the immature mind naturally avoids responsibility because it needs to protect a fragile ego. But taking absolute ownership, that forces you to confront uncomfortable truths head-on. And here's the secret. People instinctively trust and like those who own their actions. That kind of behavior represents true reliability and real personal growth. You essentially become a rock of stability in a world full of people frantically trying to shift the blame.
So, the absolutely crucial point we arrive at today is this: being likable is not about manipulation. Not at all. It is definitely not about tricking people into liking you. It is about systematically building an architecture of trust. It's about becoming the kind of person who actively provides psychological safety and emotional depth to everyone around them. When you start seeing these hidden mechanisms, the active listening, the selective vulnerability, the context building, the extreme ownership, you begin seeing human nature in a way most people frankly never will.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. What hidden human patterns will you look for in your very next interaction? Because honestly, once you start noticing the small things that shape people's lives, you unlock a whole new world of connection. Keep your eyes open, watch for those details, and I'll see you in the next explainer.